Welcome to the first semi-final of the biannual debating league brought to you by the Debaters Guild. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am Dhruv Nair and I'll be your moderator for today. We have debated about crises all around the world through the course of the league. Today, we take a trip to the Middle East, specifically Israel and Palestine. The motion given to us today is the House believes the two-state solution is the most practical solution to the Israel-Palestine conflict. And our judge today is Ms. Kirtana. Ms. Kirtana is an alumnus of Chinmaya Vidyalaya and is currently studying in her second year pursuing law in VIT Chennai. She has expressed her keen interest towards MUN since her school days. As an avid speaker, she has been part of many debates conducted around the city, such as the BATE, the Bathlon, and the ISDS, to name a few. The only other thing that she equates with practicing in MUNs is reading books. An ardent fan of the science fiction genre, she identifies Dan Brown as her favorite author. She has delegated in diverse committees ranging from economic to climate change and has an almost perfect MUN track record. As an advocate for change, she realizes the debates and MUNs to provide a platform to voice out strong opinions. She has been a part of more than 25 MUNs across the city in the capacity of a delegate, EB member, and OC member. Ma'am, it is an honor to have you adjudicate this debate today.
Yes, thanks a lot for that, Dhruv.
We'll go through some of the debate format as such. So it's a 2 versus 2 debate, as you guys know. And there's a round 1, which is constructive arguments. The round consists of 4 speeches in total with an individual speaker time of 3 minutes. Round 2 is the parley round. This round was made to resemble a civil dialogue between 2 debaters. In this round, 2 participants, one from team proposition and one from team opposition, have an open conversation arguing the resolution to the motion. The round as a whole has a maximum time limit of 5 minutes and is subject to change according to the discretion of our judge. There is no individual speaker time. Round 3 is the rebuttal round. Each speaker, one from the proposition and one from the opposition, will be given 3 minutes to present their rebuttals. Note that the speaker who presented the parley round cannot present the rebuttal round. The teams are solely to rebut each other. Round 4 is the judge questioning round and the moderator questioning round. So the adjudicator will ask a maximum of 3 questions to each team, proposition followed by opposition. Each team has 4 minutes to formulate and present the question. Answer the questions. The moderator will ask 1 question per team, the moderator being me, after the adjudicator finishes on both sides, and each team will have 1.5 minutes to formulate and answer the question. Round 5, closing statements. It ends the debate. Each team will be given 1.5 minutes to present their closing statements. In this round, the opposition presents the closing remarks first, followed by the proposition. So keeping that in mind, debaters, I request you to please turn your videos on at all times, even if it's not your turn to speak. And does anybody have any questions, or can we go straight on to debating? All right, amazing. Yes, ma'am. Do you have? All right. I now look to the first speaker of team proposition to present their case.
Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible. Please continue.
May I start?
Yes, ma'am, please start.
Yitzhak Rabin, the former president of Israel, once said, I believe that in the long run, separation between Israel and the Palestinians is the best solution for resolving the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Good evening, panel and worthy opponents. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict is the ongoing struggle between Israelis and Palestinians that began in the mid-20th century. The two-state solution is the most practical solution. And as the first speaker on the proposition team, I will strive to convince you of this very argument. The second speaker will draw a comparison between the other solutions, further proving to you why the two-state solution is ideal. Just as I delve into my constructives, I'd like to state that the Oxford Dictionary defines the word practical as likely to succeed or to be effective in real circumstances, which is nothing but feasible. The manner in which the two-state solution is executed does not affect the basic ideal, that is, the two-state solution has the best interests of both parties at heart. My first constructive deals with the capital, Jerusalem. The Clinton principles put to paper the basic truth that sovereignty is linked to territory, and the sides must adhere to the legal division of the territory. Once there seemed to be acceptance of the Clinton principles by both sides, which is ideally that the East Jerusalem would be a part of Israel and the West of Palestine, the area that has been debated over, largely the Temple Mount, better known as Haram al-Sharif, will be made a demilitarized international zone in order to ensure no violence. And if the people of both parties feel that this doesn't suffice, the United Nations can always intervene to help ensure this. Next, let's talk about Palestine. How would we proceed to identify this as a country? Of course, by this we mean two things that need to be brought into the picture. One, resources and acceptance. International bodies like the World Bank and IMF will help fund them at first, preferably through soft loans. What are soft loans? A loan provided to developing countries with low rates of interest. Yet another way would be to encourage Arab countries to do the same. Before you question why Arabs will do this, the two-state solution for Israel and Palestine has seen significant increase in support from the Arab world since 2002. Identifying this as the country, here's where the United Nations come into play, right? Over 70% of the 193 member states of the United Nations already recognize Palestine as an independent entity because of the history of the region. By allowing each group the chance to protect their ethnic identity, it will create a chance for peace in the region. What about the refugees, you may ask? Trade-offs for peace. Basically, the transfer of the refugees back to their homeland, be it Palestine or Israel. Again, this is a negotiation, not a point-blank answer. Thirdly, Hamas. The short-term goal of Hamas was to liberate Palestine, including modern-day Israel. The two-state solution will have accomplished this. The opposition may now ask us, what if they don't? Before I answer that, two things I'd like to state. The United States and the European Union classify either in whole or in part Hamas as a terrorist organization. This classification is one among various and diverse international positions on the nature of Hamas. If Israel and Palestine get what they've been fighting for, which is simply nothing but their own state, the terrorist organization cannot really take advantage of a weak political position as they would no longer be one. Regardless of what the opposition may try to tell you today, the two-state solution is not dead yet. We're not telling you this is very simple. It definitely needs negotiation. We're telling you that this is the most feasible, practical, as the motion states. With this, I'd like to conclude.
Thank you so much, first speaker of team proposition. I now look to the first speaker of team opposition to open the case.
Am I audible? Hello, am I audible?
Yes, you're audible. Please continue.
Okay, good evening,
Yes,
ladies
you're
and
audible.
gentlemen.
Please
I'll be the
continue.
first speaker from the opposition team. The two-state solution would establish an independent Palestinian state alongside Israel. Two states for two people. In theory, this would win Israel's security and allow it to retain a Jewish demographic majority, letting the country remain Jewish and democratic, while granting Palestinians a state. However, there are four issues that have proved most challenging, and each comes down to a set of bedrock demands between the two sides that in execution often appears to be mutually exclusive. One, borders. There is no consensus about precisely where to draw the line. Generally, most believe the border would follow the lines before the Arab-Israeli War of 1967, but with Israel keeping some of the land where it has built settlements and in exchange providing other lands to the Palestinians to compensate. Israel has constructed barriers along and within the West Bank that many analysts worry create a de facto border, and it has built settlements in the West Bank that will make it difficult to establish that land as a part of independent Palestine. As time goes on, settlements grow, theoretically making any future Palestinian state smaller and possibly breaking it up into not contiguous pieces. Both sides claim Jerusalem as their capital. The second point goes on to Jerusalem. It is considered as a center of religious worship and cultural heritage. The two-state solution typically calls for dividing it into an Israeli West and Palestinian East, but it is not very easy to draw the line. Jewish, Muslim, and Christian holy sites are on top of one another. Israel has declared Jerusalem as its undivided capital, effectively annexing its eastern half, and has built up construction that entrenches Israel's control over the city. Three is refugees. Large number of Palestinians fled or were expelled from their homes in what is now Israel, primarily during the 1948 Arab-Israeli War that came after Israel's creation. They and their descendants now number 5 million and believe they deserve the right to return. This is a non-starter for Israel. Too many returnees would end its Jewish demographic majority, and therefore Israel's state is both a Jewish and a democratic state. Security being number 4. For Palestinians, security means an end to foreign military occupation. For Israelis, this means avoiding a takeover of the West Bank by militant organizations such as Hamas that would threaten Israelis. It also means keeping Israeli defensible against foreign armies, which often means requiring a continued Israeli militant presence in parts of the West Bank. There are multiple variants of a so-called one-state solution, which would join all territories as one nation. But one version would grant equal rights to all in that state and would be neither Jewish or Palestinian in character because neither would be a clear majority. Skeptics fear this would risk internal instability or even a return to war if they are separated into separate Israel and Palestine. And I rest my case here.
Thank you so much for Speaker of Team Opposition. I now look to the second Speaker of Team Proposition to continue their case. Thank you.
Yes, sir. May I begin?
Yes, please, Manan. Please begin.
Yeah, thank you very much. So, ladies and gentlemen, very good evening to one and all present here. I am Manan Parekh, the second speaker of the team proposition, here to strongly propose a motion that this House believes that the two-state solution is the most practical solution to the Israel-Palestine conflict. Now, ladies and gentlemen, what will I be discussing today? Number one, what are the already proposed alternative solutions and why are they so impractical in nature? Number two, how the two-state solution would remain to be the base of the peace process even if there is a new model derived. So now, ladies and gentlemen, when our opposition disagrees to the practicality of the two-state solution, they are actually advocating the any of the below solutions. Number one, the one-state solution. Number two, the three-state solution, or number three, the autonomy plus solution. So, ladies and gentlemen, let us just start by knowing that what is the first one-state solution. So, what is the one-state solution? The one-state solution is a proposal to create a democratic, secular state in which both the Jews and Arabs would live as citizens with equal rights. Ladies and gentlemen, this is very, very controversial because of two facts. Number one, it really violates Zionism itself, and we cannot simply say that it does not violate Zionism. Zionism was something that was meant to be the main cause behind the whole conflict. It was the main cause behind the Jewish settlements, and it was also the main cause behind their disagreement with the Palestinians. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this one-state solution asks people to live together. The people who were once mortal enemies to live together. How is this even going to be stable? And that is why we say that this is very, very unpractical. Ladies and gentlemen, moving on to the three-state solution. This is a pretty hilarious one. The three-state solution requires the Palestinian areas to go under their original owners, that is, the Gaza Strip under Egypt and West Bank under Jordan. One thing that this type of solution is missing is Hamas. Ladies and gentlemen, Hamas was formed in 2007 and it does not actually include Hamas into this. So, ladies and gentlemen, over here, Egypt will have to accept Gaza with the Hamas present there, ruling there. That means challenging Hamas. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not something that Egypt wants to do. Moreover, it is completely against the Palestinian interests to have their own country. And as it actually makes them merge with Jordan, it is something that again puts them on a threat. There can be things because Jordan and Israel have very close ties, especially after the Israel-Palestine conflict. Ladies and gentlemen, moving on to the autonomy plus. This basically means to provide autonomy to the Palestine areas like West Bank, giving them freedom to hold elections, open schools, etc. Which actually which actually triggers three main questions. Number one, what will happen to the Israeli settlements in the West Bank region? Number two, who will administer the West Bank and Gaza? Palestine or Hamas? Number three, without the military, a lot of things, Palestine would still be under threat. Ladies and gentlemen, this itself says that all these solutions are very, very unpractical, and any solution apart from these are also going to be violating at least the interests of any one stakeholder, and that is why we consider them to be highly unpractical. And that is why we conclude in front of you that our side of the case is 100% correct, that the two-state solution is the most practical solution. With this, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to conclude. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, second speaker of team proposition. I now look to the second speaker of team opposition to end the constructive statements for that side.
Am I audible?
Yes, you're very audible.
Okay. So, a very good evening to everyone present here today. So, let's get straight to the point, right? The one state solution is supported by a variety of arguments. But the most important argument is that a single state, as compared to the two state or the three state solution, offers superior opportunities to maximize the legitimate rights, interests, and aspirations of the greatest number of Israelis and Palestinians involved. In particular, it is a framework most amenable for the genuine realization of the rights of Palestinian refugees to return to their homes and homeland, and for the vindication of the rights for full equality for the Palestinian citizens in Israel. Thus, the one state solution is more just, not just between the Israeli Jews and the Palestinian Arabs, but also among differently situated groups within Palestine and Israel. Moreover, a solution that emphasizes on justice and truly remedies past violations of the right will prove to be more durable over time. So let's understand and view Palestine and Israel as a functioning, natural, organic ecosystem in itself. The Jewish and Palestinian inhabitants are so inextricably entwined, geographically, economically, administratively, and simply otherwise, that no equitable, mutually acceptable partition of the territory is possible. Unlike what the proposition suggests, partition is far from being the solution for intercommunal tension. In fact, it might be a source for many other complex problems, which, given the current circumstances of Israel and Palestine, they might not be able to handle. All attempts to construct partition lines that fairly apportion the territory into to the two people have failed, and these attempts to separate them by their very nature are very violent. Since the first major attempt to impose separation during the 1948 war till the 2008 discussions, over 7.3 million Palestinians were expelled or fled from their homes in fear. In short, partition in a variety of formulations has been international community's guiding principle with respect to Palestine and Israel for over 60 years, and it has repeatedly proven itself to be a failure. Secondly, let us approach this in a more moral or ideological direction. Essentially, the Zionist ethnic nationalism is regressive and chauvinistic ideology that, if not by its very nature, at least in the form and manner that it is actualized in Palestine, has entailed aggression, oppression, and injustice against the Palestinians. In contrast, uh, when we uh, when we support the one nation policy, it will make sure that these Palestinians are treated with tolerance, equality, and injustice will be curbed. The single state principles will ensure that all the citizens, Jews, Palestinians, Muslims, and Christians, would be in alignment with the morals and aspirations ideal in the contemporary world, and therefore it will be more desirable internationally. My third argument by default rests in the belief that the two-state solution is simply no longer possible. And the basic thrust for this argument is that Israel's colonizing process in the West Bank has gone so far now that it is irreversible, and if reversed would lead to a whole new series of humanitarian crises. And having said that, the remaining land base is simply not sufficient for the Palestinian state itself. With that, I would like to conclude my statement. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, second speaker of team opposition. We now move on to the second round, which is the parley round. In 3, 2, 1, both of you will have 5 minutes. So 3, 2, 1, you may begin.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, go on.
Yeah. Okay, I have a few points to make. So, like you were talking about a two-state solution, right? So, I have a few points to make. Little progress has been made towards the two-state solution, despite being the favored proposal since the 1960s. The enthusiasm for an independent Palestine is now limited to small circles. Harris Mir Barum in 2015, I guess, he said that the no solution determines stand collision has won. And on top of that, Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli prime minister since 2009, endorsed the two-state solution in a speech that year. But he continued to expand West Bank settlements, and in 2015 said there would be no withdrawals
So
and no
let me just
concessions. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. So basically, the point you're trying to make over here is that Israel-Palestine, the two-state solution does not exist just because of the fact that these higher-end authorities are saying no, right? So I'll tell you one thing. Israel and Palestine, majority of the people of Israel and Palestine want the two-state solution to be applied. Moreover, UK, USA, Arab League, and the UN itself want the two-state solution to be applied. And if you're saying that the two-state solution is no more applicable, then I ask a question: why? because it does not just make sense to say that it is no more applicable, no more applicable,
Okay,
because
okay.
yeah,
One
go
second.
on.
The I'm not saying that we're not only talking about people of higher authority. The ever-growing number of Jewish settlements in the occupied territories presents also a major obstacle to establishing a Palestinian state. For example, Mahmoud Abbas, the president of Palestinian Authority, has warned that the continuation of settlements will destroy the chances of two-state solution and lead to more extremism and instability if you
Okay,
forcefully separate them.
okay,
Yeah, yeah.
one
Go ahead.
okay. When you're talking about the settlements there, do
Yeah.
you know that the settlements were actually designed to be irreversible? Because these people who were actually, made to go over there by, offering them cheap housing and subsidized livelihood, they actually have their own property in Israel, so they don't have to actually, it won't be such a great problem to just revert back to Israel again. It was just to ensure that Palestine does not again indulge in terrorist activities. That's so
Okay.
simple.
Okay, one second. If you're planning to separate the two on the basis of religious or ethnic lines, for that matter, rather than pushing for a fully integrated Israel, it will prolong the sectarian violence in the region. And in 2010, if I'm right, the UN specific person, Richard Falk, backed by saying that so long as there are two separate states or two distinct entities, there will be enmity throughout the region, as in if you actually continue to separate them and you tell them to move off, the
Okay, one thing.
minorities, one second, the
Okay,
minorities in that particular region will get affected. So,
no,
and
no, no. The
eventually,
thing is,
yeah.
sorry to interrupt you there, but the thing is, you're actually telling our point that they are, when they are going to be under one umbrella, there are going to be fights, and that's what we are telling you. Just give Palestine a separate state, that is sovereign, and we are telling you to give Israel a separate state that is sovereign. So, in a way, you have actually agreed to us. So that is why we have to have that resolution to be the two-state solution, because one state is like too much. Have you seen in Syria? Such a great, such a great catastrophe it was. Syria is
So,
the prime
uh,
example for the
I
one
get
state solution.
I get your point, sir. But the thing is, if you separate on the basis of religious lines, as we already know that religion is the major reason for fights. If you separate on the basis of religion lines, there are minorities in the very own place where who will be oppressed by majority, and you will not be able to stop it. Eventually, violence will increase very much under your own people, and you will not be able to control it because eventually
Mom, I,
majority
I
will
get
be
your
able.
point, Mom. I get your point. But the thing you're missing over here is that there's not going to be any fights, because these two are going to become separate sovereign countries, a kind of countries, but yeah, states, because of the size. So I don't understand how exactly there's going to be violence. If they want
Okay,
to do
one
any
second.
violence, there
Okay,
needs
I
to be a
get.
war.
Okay, fine. But then, if you're planning to push everybody to different places, and you're geographically itself, they aren't separate. Like if you're there are places that are occupied by Israel in Palestine, and if you're telling that Palestine is to be divided into small pieces here and there, because security itself for Palestine and for Israel are two different definitions,
Okay,
and they're
1 minute.
completely intertwined. Yeah.
I guess the proposition has never ever stated that it should be, given in fragments. What we believe is, see, this is something that
But
USA has
debaters,
been proposing.
sorry to interject,
Yeah.
but ma'am, would you like to continue this for another minute, 1.5 minutes?
Just give them 1 minute to conclude each of their viewpoints because both of them haven't
Okay,
had a
ma'am,
chance
1 minute
to speak.
each.
Yes, yes, 1 minute.
All right. So 2 minutes in total time. Please
No,
conclude
actually,
your parley
actually,
on
just
this.
give them 1 minute in total, not one
All
minute
right.
per team. Just 1 minute.
Okay. 1 minute.
Uh,
Please get your please. All right.
okay. Shall I conclude first?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. What
Yes.
we're basically trying to place is that the four basic things that I had mentioned is borders. Separating on the basis of borders will be an issue again because eventually Palestine will be divided into fragments. Then we're
Okay,
talking about
1 minute,
Jerusalem.
mom. Sorry to
Just let me
interrupt you
just
there. No, no, sorry to interrupt you there, but we do not want exactly the same thing that you have stated. We
But
just want our
eventually,
answers.
sir,
That's it.
the Israel has occupied certain places in Palestine, and if you are going to return that, again, security risk comes to Israel. So you are indirectly attacking your very own proposition. If you're dividing on the basis of religion or on the basis of border, eventually you are attacking the fact that Palestine will be in fragments. Because if you're going to make an exact half, West Bank is where you have to start from. And West Bank is what Israel is not ready to give up on.
Ma'am,
And then
please continue. Or please conclude, please.
okay, fine. So I'm just concluding by saying that Jerusalem, refugees, and security are the three main points that I came up with. Refugees who want to
Okay.
return, and
Okay.
all of those facts. Yeah,
Moving
please
on.
continue. Yeah.
Sir, could I just get like 30 seconds to conclude my case?
I'm not, an extension will not be allowed under protocol. So we can give you 10 seconds. Just very quickly conclude.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much, sir. Ma'am, the main point that we were trying to make over here is that the point that our opposition brought up actually, and I would like to thank them for bringing that point up. Moreover, we have actually told you why, how the borders will be taken care of. We have told you how the Jerusalem will be taken care of, and we have already also told you the refugees and the security. Like we have told you everything, but what have you given to us? You have not even given us a proper model that could be followed, because one state solution is as it is so much vague. And with this, I believe that the consensus that we should reach to is the two-state solution.
Thank you so much. Okay, that was a very fiery parley round. We'll now be moving on to the rebuttal round, which is 3 minutes starting from proposition. So, any speaker who is not part of the parley round, you may present your rebuttal speech in 3 minutes. Proposition first.
Yeah, I just need a couple of seconds.
Proposition, are you any member of team proposition?
Yeah, I guess Nandana is having some network issues. Okay, yeah, she
Okay,
joined
no
it.
problem.
Yeah, she joined it. Yeah.
Sorry about
Miss
that. May
Nandana?
I start?
Yeah, no problem. Yes, you may. You have 3 minutes.
Good evening, panel. I'm here now to tell you why we win this debate. Firstly, the first speaker from opposition proudly brought about the statement that there was no consensus about the border. Well, I'd like to point out how we actually told you what would happen. Like we told you about the West, East, and we even told you a solution for Haram al-Sharif, which has been the major point that was debated about in international forums. So I think we completely nullify that point, considering we already spoke about it, and the fact that the opposition just disregarded that point completely and kept talking about it. Moreover, they spoke about, they didn't give us an alternative at first. They then went on to tell us the one-state solution. Well, one thing I'd like to point out is that Israel and Palestine have been at war for over a century. I really don't think living together is the best option right now. Also, let's look at this way, right? You have Hamas, a military organization that is taking advantage right now and causing so much bloodshed. And let's not disregard the bloodshed that's been there for years now. Another thing is that the speaker brought about these terms that is too intertwined. That is Hamas is too Israel and Palestine are too intertwined. I would like to point out that this is not the case right now, although it may seem like that. We can actually bring about a proper way through negotiations, as we have stated on multiple occasions, that will actually change this and make it possible. Another thing is that I would like that the speaker said, and I quote, moral and ideological. Panel, please note the very word in the debate, in the motion of this debate, is practical. And I really don't think practical and ideological go well together, rather than antonyms. And other thing I'd like to point out is how they spoke about tolerance and equality in a one-state solution. Please understand that this will not happen. And here's why. When you put one state together, okay, let's look at it this way. You have people of Palestine, you have people of Israel, right? They've had to deal with so many issues with each other. Israelis obviously just want to fly a flag that has a Star of David, whereas the Arabs just want to proudly profess their religion. This is honestly not possible when it's one state. The speaker then told us a lot about like how we have to overlook religion. Actually, they've been trying to overlook religion for over a century now. It's clearly not working. And this is obviously not the best time to try to put that at risk either. Another thing is how we can actually harmonize. However, this is not possible, as I've already told you on countless occasions. The opposition has truly overcomplicated the two-state solution. What we told you is it's not exactly extremely simple. All we're telling you is that it's actually feasible. With proper negotiation, with the leaders sitting together, this is actually a more feasible solution than anything else they bring up, especially one-state solution, where you're putting two people who've been at war for over a century together and try to work it out. That simply just does not work. With that, I'd like to conclude.
Thank you so much, rebuttal proposition speaker. I now look to the rebuttal speaker of team opposition to present their rebuttal speech in 3 minutes. So anybody but the parley round speaker.
Okay. Yeah. Can I begin?
Yeah, you may begin.
Okay, so the proposition brought about the point of negotiation and how the two-state solution would be possible if the leaders negotiated. But that's what has been happening for the last 60 years. But nothing other than violence has increased in the two regions. And talking about Gaza itself, we cannot simply ignore it. That was their test case for Palestine to prove that they were ready for a two-state solution. But instead, what happened? It was basically a bunch of Muslim hardliners who want nothing less than Israel's destruction itself. A two state would eventually lead to war, which honestly has been going on for the last 60 years itself. And yet, as we know, the Gaza experiment failed miserably. The people are run by a terrorist organization and they spend so much money just on attacking Israel that they could have used for or on the welfare of Palestine itself. Another thing that I would like to bring up is resources and refugees. So that would go together. So if in fact Palestine is made a separate state, they simply would not have enough resources to handle the amount of incoming refugees and the number of Palestine people who are occupied in Israel itself. They would become very vulnerable. And the fact is, Israel occupied Palestine is already having one state solution as it is. They share a highway system, they share the agriculture, they share various other resources with amongst themselves, and it's proven to be much peaceful than Gaza itself, right? And another thing is the mention of UN. So again, historically, it's been seen when the UN intervenes without the two countries itself having talks, it proves to be useless because you can still have 120 countries say that yes, you are an independent country, but in the land itself, when there's so much commotion happening, it's hard to have that as a solid statement as used by the proposition. And another point would be division. Like mostly it has been about nationality, but once you separate the two countries, religious interests also are interfering. Let's take for example Jerusalem itself. Both the involved parties have deep historical and religious connection to these to Jerusalem itself, and in the past there have been multiple attempts to partition this appropriately, but that's always led to further more violence and commotion amongst the people itself. And with that, I would like to end my statement saying that the one state solution provides the best alternative to. There would be compromises made between the two sides, but it would guarantee the best opportunity for equal rights and justice for all the parties involved in this situation. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, rebuttal speaker from team opposition. We now move into the judge questioning round. So, ma'am, can you please ask a maximum of 3 questions to team proposition?
Sure. All right. We'll start with team proposition. So you guys are for the motion that there should be a two-state solution, right? So tell me one thing. There was this resolution, if I'm not wrong, resolution 242 by the UNSC, if I'm not wrong, the United Nations itself. I'm not really sure about that. But then it's resolution 242 wherein Israel uh, Israel was supposed to give away all of their territories, and it was supposed to be a peace talk sort of thing. But Israel did not even acknowledge it. They did not say okay to it or whatsoever. So how do you think they will be okay with this two-state solution when they haven't even given their consent to a UN resolution that mandated them to give away their the such so called yes. So, team prop, that would be my only question, I guess, to team proposition. So, if you guys can give me an answer to that.
All right. Thank you for your question, ma'am. Team proposition, you have 5 minutes to formulate and present your answers. So your 5 minutes start now.
Yeah, I'd like to begin with the answer. The main point here is that before this was proposed by the UN, Israel was actually under attack, under a stealth attack from Arab countries. I think, I'm not sure about the coalition, but from Arab countries. And that it actually led them to, it was a stealth attack, the Yom Kippur War, if I'm not wrong. And what happened in the result of that is they'll obviously not really, want to go with Israel or like just go for a accord immediately. I think they needed time to just resolve all the bloodshed and then come up and speak for their citizens' sake. Maran, anything you'd like to add?
Actually, yes. So Israel had actually returned back all the territories to Egypt. That was the Sinai Peninsula, and it had also returned the Golan Heights, also, if I'm not wrong. So Israel actually has believed in the peace talks, but again, when there is something as brutal as Palestine, at that time, not to forget, Palestine was actually something the Jewish people were scared of, because Israel itself was a newly born country, and at that time it would be highly unlikely for it to sign to a UN resolution and also take care of the ongoing conflict over there. So, and if I'm not wrong, the 242 resolution never called upon Israel to actually withdraw from the territories, as far as I've read it. But yeah, I could be wrong there. But the previous answer that Nandana and I gave should be considered. What I think that ma'am meant to ask us is that it did not bind to UN. So how are you exactly telling us that it'll bind to the UN in the peacekeeping of the two-state solutions execution? Was That was the thing, right, ma'am?
Yeah. When they did
Yeah.
not even say okay to a
Yes.
UN mandated resolution,
So
what did
actually,
they
what we
say?
mentioned in our speech was that this should be regulated by the UN peacekeeping forces, as it had been in Sierra Leone. Moreover, Israel had actually, it had actually binded to the UN resolution of 1947, which had actually, bifurcated the place of Palestine at that time into Israel and Palestine, but Palestine hadn't done that. So that is why the Arab countries were against Israel, and again that led to the war. After which the Arab countries made peace, and then it became Israel versus Palestine.
All right, Manan, clarification done. Yeah, we'll move ahead with team opposition for right now. So you guys say that, two-state solution isn't viable, and for such and such reason it would be a problem. But what sort of guarantee could you give to the identity of the Jews? Wouldn't that be an issue? Because right now they're being oppressed, and if you want to continue with this a single state solution, won't they be oppressed even more because they do not have, say, an autonomy? Right, they cannot take decisions on their own. They do not have anyone to represent themselves. So wouldn't their entire representation, the entire Jewish representation, come under question?
Team opposition, you now have a total time limit of 5 minutes to formulate and present your answers. Your time begins now.
Yeah. So there have been talks about multiple international leaders and experts that even if the Israel does not declare themselves as a Jewish state itself, the culture and presence of the Jews will not be hindered as such, because the present generation believes that they should move from this more chauvinistic nationalism that the older Jewish generations had, because there is a consensus on the fact that the Jews were in fact fled from their hometowns because the Germans itself had the same mindset, and they agreed that them following the same would not do any good for themselves or the Palestinians involved, and that it would, like most other international issues, it would require a more educated and well aware generation of uh, Palestinians and Israelis who would agree upon the fact that both the religions itself and the nationalities can be uh, respected and can thrive in their own presence.
All right, Anita, thanks for that.
Ma'am, are all the questions done with? Are you? Is there any clarification required?
No.
No. I
All
just
right.
had one question for the. Sure.
Okay. All right. So, ma'am, can we move on?
Yeah, definitely. Go ahead.
All right. Okay. Yeah. So let's. Okay. So this is my moderator questioning round. In proposition, the context of this is going to be a little long, and I want to acknowledge a few things which might have been misrepresented. So, ma'am had clearly brought up Resolution 242, upon which you had the justification of that was it did not really call for the removal of military, and it did not, they were in a time of war. So, I'll read the preamble of Resolution 242. It says the inadmissibility of the acquisition of territory that was acquired by force during the war and the need to work out for a just and lasting peace in which every state in the area can live safely. So they did, in fact, call for removing their military because it was illegal under Article 49 of the Geneva Convention. But again, it's justified because they were in times of war. So my question to you is Resolution 465. It said Israel must cease building settlements. They did not. UN Advisory 2004 from the International Court of Justice said that they need to stop building the apartheid wall. They did not. The first speaker of team proposition came up and basically said that UN would be the middle peacemaker. How do you think Israel is ever going to accept UN being the pacemaker or the peacemaker when they have got a very fundamental activity going on with Trump's peace to prosperity has already been applied. So why do you think they'll settle for less? Number one, why do you think they'll settle for less than the one proposed by Donald Trump? And how do you think they'll comply with the United Nations when they have almost never complied with the United Nations as early as 2014, actually as early as 2020, when they are comparatively peaceful with everybody? So that's my question. Uh, if you could answer that, then I might have a bit to add on since we're running. We have a lot of time.
Sir, actually, I have one class. We had stated the role of UN in order to ensure that during the peacemaking process, that is, when the two-state solution is actually applied, UN would actually ensure that there's not much problems occurring, because as we see, it is quite rhetoric that a lot of people have been telling that in the two-state solution there's like more humanitarian crisis that can happen. So if there are the UN peacekeeping forces there, then we believe that there won't be that kind of a violence. Moreover, yes, agreeing to the statement made by the moderator regarding the Trump's peace plan. Yes, the peace plan is good for Israel, but again, it's not good for Palestine. But over here in the debate, we are supposed to discuss what is good for the Palestinians as well as Israelis. If this motion would have been that this house as Israel would find the two-state solution to be the most practical enough, then basically we would have told that yes, the Trump's peace plan is the best, and we would have itself opposed to the thing. But over here, we are concerned with Palestine. We are
All
concerned
right.
with Israel.
Okay. Firstly, thank you for that answer. That's a very clear one. Although I do have a little bit of, since we have the time, I want to go on for a little bit further. So basically, the first speaker defined practical to be likely to succeed or be effective in real circumstances, feasible. Oxford Dictionary. So if you have given Israel the peace to prosperity, which they planned on annexing on July 1st, how do you think another peace deal would be accepted by Israel despite them doing annexation every day? Why do you think they'll settle for a peace deal which is not as good as peace to prosperity? Yeah, why do you think they'll settle for anything less? Despite having the largest military force, they have US on their side.
We like to answer now. It
Amazing. All
actually
right.
is, yeah, many Palestinians and Israelis, as well as the Arab League, have stated that they would, in fact, accept a two-state solution based on 1949 armistice agreements. And in fact,
Okay.
some
Yeah.
Israeli journalists suggest that the Palestinians are unprepared to accept a Jewish state, so they feel that a two-state solution will be the most viable at this point.
All right. Okay, that's a valid answer. Thank you for your answer. Okay, we have no. Would you like to add anything to that, or maybe continue to team opposition?
Could you just repeat your question like in just 10 seconds so that I can answer? I mean, I can
Manan,
add.
can you hear me now?
Yeah,
Hello.
yeah, I'm able to hear you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so actually, ma'am, okay, you want to add, right? So what I basically said, again, I'll repeat it. How would it even be feasible when they've violated multiple things like Resolution 456, Resolution 242, Resolution 446, UN Advisory 2004 by the ICJ, which happened recently, and Israel's annexation plan along with Trump's peace to prosperity. If annexation continues, Palestinians will get a deal which is even more worse than this. So the deal you're proposing is not possible right at this moment. How do you think Israel will back down, take a offer which is much worse than they have right now? How do you think that will ever happen? Ladies and gentlemen, I'm really sorry. Time's up for team proposition. Again, thank you for your answers. I'll be moving into team opposition questioning. So, you had stated multiple times that there are so many settlers in West Bank. So actually, 85% of settlers live in 6% of the West Bank that borders Israel's 1967 line. 85%. And if you remember in 2008, a deal was almost met with the two-state solution, meaning that they had to exchange around 100 kilometers of land. And it only didn't happen because I believe it was Ehud Olmert, who was the prime minister of Israel. I'm not really sure, but he went for corruption. He was charged for corruption. So they were almost going to get a two-state solution by exchanging 6% of the West Bank borders. So how do you think it's not feasible when it's easily the best solution? And then I'll add to my question after you answer this.
So, actually, time and time again, we've seen that most of these agreements remain on paper itself. Even when the UN itself intertwined, I think Israel has condemned over 45 resolutions in, I guess, the 60 resolutions that were taken in regarding this conflict itself. And even though these were made from a lot of polls taken within Israel, majority of them do not plan. I mean, do not. Agree upon the settlers moving back in because they've already established very well smoothly running communities within the West Bank itself. So they think it would be infeasible or also loss of great resources to again spend money and energy into shifting these people who are already might be refugees from other countries. Most of them are refugees who stay in the West Bank. So yeah.
All right. Firstly, thank you for the answer. That was very clear. Just to add on to that, if I may. So basically, if you know Mahmoud Abbas, who's currently leading the PA, Palestinian Authority, Fatah. So what he said is, if they ever come into consensus, there's going to be an ultimatum given to the Palestinian people, Palestinians living all over the world. That ultimatum will decide whether they get a two-state solution or a one-state solution or any solution. So the statistics are two-thirds of Palestinians back violence against Israel, two-thirds want Abbas out of office, and two-thirds reject the two-state solution. 70% also reject the one-state solution. So how do you think, by the definitions given by team proposition, it is practical or achievable of a one-state solution when 70% of the people are going to deny and reject that ultimatum?
Okay, so it's only in the recent years that the one-state solution itself has become more popular, but we need to consider the fact that the two-state solution has been proposed time and time again with a varying level of conditions and all of those applied, and time again both the sides have turned it down. And it is important to consider one state because uh, even like the two state would cause much more harm and violence, and it like because there's a huge amount of Palestinians residing in Israel itself. And of course, if Palestine was declared a individual state, they don't have, as we mentioned before, they don't have the resources to manage the people within Palestine and the incoming refugees. And since they've failed for over 60 years and it has caused nothing but more violence, a lot of journalists within Israel and Palestine and a lot of international journalists and leaders believe that the one state solution would be more viable. I guess the conditions regarding sovereignty and all of those other points just have to be made clear, but they would be in the coming future as we discuss more about it.
All right. Okay. Thank you so much, both teams, for answering my questions. We'll move into closing statements, which is the final. So, if the people watching on YouTube, this is the final stage of the debate, and this is 1.5 minutes is given to each participant, and they give their closing statements. This round starts by the opposition. So, I request team opposition, any speaker of team opposition, to give their closing statements in 1.5 minutes.
Okay, am I audible?
Yes, you're very audible. Please continue.
Okay. After 6 decades during which the international community has attempted, at least intermittently, to implement a partition of Palestine into two states, it's time to admit a painful truth. These efforts have brought only conflict and strife. There is no realistic scenario by which this pattern will change. A rights based approach to resolving the Palestinian Israeli conflict strongly militates in support of one state solution as the one solution that promises to provide the widest array of rights to the greatest number of Palestinians and Israelis. Moreover, where rights are genuinely in conflict, such as in the right of nationhood, a one state solution would effectuate the most equitable compromise of right for all. Quite simply, the one state solution is the most just solution. It is a solution most likely to bring lasting peace to the region because it will truly resolve the major grievances that currently contribute to the conflict. Perhaps the greatest resources on which we draw are the deep commitments of both Israelis and Palestinians for real and lasting peace and true democracy. In the end, perhaps one of the weaknesses of two-state solution has been its inability to excite anyone on either side of the conflict, as it clearly involves deep compromises to justice. The one-state vision, by contrast, can be more morally compelling and has the capacity to unite both Israelis and Palestinians in a joint struggle against the chauvinist nationalisms and in support of principles of peace, equality, and non-violence. And I would like to rest my case.
Thank you so much, closing speaker of team opposition. I now look to the closing speech of team proposition, with which we'll end the debate.
Yeah, thank you very much. Can I begin?
Yes, please, you may begin.
Yeah, thank you very much. So, ladies and gentlemen, let us see what have we given to you. We have told you that the two-state solution is completely practical if and if only it is applied. So you cannot actually judge a particular thing before it is applied, and that is why. But here we have tried to tell you every possible scenario where the two-state solution seems out to be the most practical solution than any others, and in a way, that our respected moderator asked us about the Trump's peace plan. It is also not a practical solution. The debate over here is whether the two-state solution is the most practical one if applied, ladies and gentlemen. Moreover, we have also told you we have answered all your problems regarding the borders. We have answered your problem regarding the regarding Jerusalem. We have answered all the questions that our opposition wanted us to answer. We have told you that solutions that are proposed are eventually going to die out just because of the fact that the whole of the interests are not addressed, ladies and gentlemen. With this, I believe that we need to stop deliberating over this, and we need to take up the two-state solution uh, as the uh, as the solution towards the conflict, because it seems to be a very practical solution, as we have stated to you. We have with this, ladies and gentlemen, the team proposition feels that it has made the case really clear than the team opposition, who have just merely stated the one state solution, which also we have told that it is not very applicable. And we have also convinced you. I hope we have convinced you. With this, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to rest my case. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Manan. We have now come to the end of the first semi-final of the biannual debating league. I'd firstly like to thank Ms. Kirtana for taking some time away and adjudicating our debate. We're very grateful that you came for the semi-finals to judge. So, if you have any type of feedback, please, uh, the floor is yours.
Yeah, sure. Uh, First, thanks a lot for, thanks I really need to thank the organizing committee, the Debaters Guild as such, for having me here. You guys have done a wonderful job in organizing this event, because primarily because this sort of in event is something that I've not been a part of. Say one which has a parlay round, one which has a questioning round, and such that. And it's a very good initiative, and I hope you guys continue doing all of these things. And yeah, thanks for having me over here. With regards to feedback, team proposition, yeah. So yeah, you guys